I'm waiting for the recording to kick in. Okay, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for the user meetup in February. Um, we had the polls. If you already answered, great. If you haven't, just take a minute and do that. We'll appreciate it. The agenda is very similar if you have been here before to the ones that we did before. There are polls and hello that we're doing now. Then I'll give an update on different pollination products. This time, we don't have that many updates for the Revit plugin, but we talk about the Rhino plugin and also apps. And then John Key will give a long demo on the Rhino plugin and its features. And after that, we will have the QA session at the end. So if this is your first time, Pollination is an ecosystem of tools for environmental building design and simulation. Our goal is to get you from your question to actionable data quickly. And for us, this is not how we think about going from question to actionable data. We help you to run studies, come up with better questions, informed questions, and get you to actionable data. And this is a famous chart that by now you should know. The point is that if you think about the end-to-end of the process of collaboration, it's not about running simulations faster. It's about being able to get feedback faster at the time that you need it. And of course, also another one is to make sure the design model and the analysis model can be kind of interchangeable and in sync, so we don't have to spend most of our time redrawing the stuff or fixing it. So this is how Pollination works. That helps you with the process. In a way, you can deploy your solutions. It used to be recipes, and now we have also apps, and people can use it directly from their side without the need to talk to a human or send files. To make that possible, we have developed 5 different technologies: CAD plugins, recipes, cloud computing, web interface, and apps. Today, we'll be talking about this one, CAD plugins, and inside CAD plugins, Rhino. And mostly, we are going to show how you can use it as a modeler, like an energy modeler, or someone who prepares the model for daylight simulation, and how you can do it in Rhino and why it makes things much easier. This is a graph that shows how all these technologies work together. In short, you have the analytical model and recipes in the middle that can be executed on a cloud, on Pollination, or can be executed locally. You have the CAD plugins that helps you to generate this model. We have the web interface that helps you QA, QC the process, that helps you to collaborate together. So the updates for the Rhino plugin from the last time, we had the export to GEM. We did it last month, so you could export geometry from Rhino to GEM to take it to IS. There was a request to do an import. So now we have import. So what you can do, if you export a model from IS, you can open it inside the Rhino plugin, and it brings everything in for the geometry, right? So this video shows I think that was the hospital model, and everything is ready to go. So this is like a simulatable model, which has all the room and all the information for those rooms. So that's one addition. The other one, I know we don't have that many eQuest users, but we have a great news for the eQuest users, and hopefully a way for people to start using the plugin and move to Energy Plus slow but steady, is now if you have a model and you solve the adjacency, we also have save as to INP file format, which is the format that you can use in eQuest. And this has been developed by Trevor, which is on this call. So shout out to Trevor, and is sponsored by BR+A engineers, or is it engineer or consultant? But BR+A, just look for BR+A, and you can see the model comes in. It's alpha release, so there are missing functionalities, but overall you can see that geometry totally came in. The shades are simplified to be eQuest friendly. We don't have window parameters there yet, but the overall workflow works, and if you want to test it, it's time to test it. So these are the main limitations that we have. It's mainly useful for geometry translation. We do also export construction and materials, but we don't do, for example, HVAC system export and all those, and I don't think we want to. again, like most of the development is by Trevor, so they make the decision. It's great to give feedback if you are a user or if you know someone who is a user who will be happy to use this. Only supports extruded geometry, so if you have geometry that's not extrusion, we simplify that during the export, and does not export the interior wall, so it's only exteriors, and that's why solving adjacency is important. So our interoperability chart is growing, and this is where we are right now. I like to call it an interoperability beast. And the thing that you see is making it different is instead of trying to use GBXML for connection, we're trying to just write natively to every file format. So we don't have to deal with the complexities that can come with using another file that we don't control. So now you can import, as you can see, as this side from OSM, GBXML, IDF, and GEM. And you can export to INP, HPJSON, OSM, GBXML, IDF, GEM, and RAT files. And from HPJSON, actually, you can do VTK too if you want to do result visualization and all those. The other thing that we did, and you'll see today in the Rhino plugin, is improved result visualization. So our focus has been on, our initial focus has been on making sure the interoperability, building geometry, QA, QC is in place. But now that that's figured out, now it's the time to make sure you get all the result visualization functionalities that you need to be able to make, meaningful visualization and customizable ones. So we're bringing all the goodies from Ladybug Tools result visualization, which is something that people really like to Rhino. It will be a process, so they're not there. All of them are not there yet, but the legend is already there. So you'll see today the thing that I just showed here. John Key will show something similar during the presentation. For pollination apps, and apps are something that, as you know, it's still under development, and we are heavily working on it, and that's the part that will cover all the extra simulation, extra result visualization, and post-processing for you. One of the things that has happened is the 3D viewer is improved a lot. So if you have used the older one, it was jumpy and it was refreshing every time that you had new data. Now this one is much more stable, and you can see like the data visualization is just up there. You have access to it. So all the values that are important to get access to are right there, so you don't have to go inside the layer to get access to data. That's one. The other thing is for the charts. For the 2D charts, we added this mix chart, if you want to call it, or weather data summary chart that you can quickly generate that has all the weather data involved. This is one of those charts that a lot of people ask for, and it gives you a very good summary of the weather data. So this one is added. We started to support transparency between the app visualization. So now, excuse me, if you have the geometry, you can see it. The preview can be transparent, which gives you a better, more improved experience. One of the other things that we did as an example to show one of the potentials of apps is, I don't know how many of you have worked with Architects AI, but Architects is this project that Theodore and his colleagues are working on, that you just write what you want. For example, you want an apartment, and it generates an apartment for you with 2-bedroom. And he wanted to work on a Rhino plugin, let's say, and he wanted to develop everything from scratch. And then instead of doing that, we basically made it a pollination app. And now you can see that you can generate it, then you can interact with it inside the app, and you can bake it into Rhino. And if you want to continue working on it inside Rhino, now you can do. And that model is a simulatable model right there. And let's keep in mind that these apps are going to go to Revit too. So now you can do the same thing, or you will be able to do the same thing inside Revit. So this is, again, like that idea of like you just write the app once and you reuse it everywhere. And we also finished an end-to-end workflow example of, so this is a daylight factor test app. You see, I turn on sync, and then I get the model from Pollination, which means the pollination model will be loaded inside the app. Now I run the simulation. It gives me the average daylight factor for every grade, and there are 2 grades here. And it visualizes the results back inside Rhino, as you can see. So because it's listening to design changes, now if I add a new building here, let's say as context, the app will pick this up and start running a new simulation in the background, right? While the thing is going on, and then gives feedback. So the reason this is important is not because running Daylight Factory is challenging or like is a new thing. The reason this is important is for the first time, we have access to real design environment connected to the simulation functionalities that we can easily and quickly customize. This means now you can write apps, or in the near future, you can write app, and technically now you can do, write apps and start saying like, keep track of average Daylight Factor in my model every hour, or unsave, or trigger it. And then if it's going less than this, send me an email. Or if it's going that, give me a notification. So you can do all that. You can now stay in your design environment, keep doing the design changes, and having some analysis running in the background if you want. And again, in Rhino, the design model and analytical model are more separated. But if you think about this in the context of Revit, you can see it can be way more integrated in a way of you can check the models as people are doing it without interrupting the process. And I think with that, I'll just hand it over to Yanji, unless someone has any questions that I have to reply now. Okay, I think we're good to go.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
I can.
All right, perfect, thanks. All right, so in the Rhino plugin demo today, we're gonna lay out how to prepare your model, select an existing recipe, or actually two recipes. We're gonna show how to do a local run and a cloud run. And then visualize the results all from within Rhino. And hopefully we'll do this in about 30 minutes without anything breaking. I tested it out before signing on, and it all seemed to be working great. Let's see if that continues. And that's only because we're constantly fixing things and making improvements to the plugin. So let's get started. I'm in Rhino. I have my grid snaps on, and I also have my object snaps on so that I can create rooms pretty quickly. So if you hit shift, which is what I'm hitting right now, you can unclick the square ratio so that you can create a rectangular space. And I have a default height of 3 meters set. So I'm just going to quickly create a couple of rooms here that we can start manipulating and get ready to model or simulate. So keeping the snap to grid on helps make sure that everything is aligned. We do have a feature, snap to grid, to allow you to take a model that might not be built using snap to grid, but we'll save that for a future presentation today. So once you've designed something, and let me just add one more room so I can show you something. Say you accidentally drew a room that was too short. If you hit Control Shift on a room surface, you can move that surface by typing in M enter, and it will automatically adjust and keep the room definition. You can do the same with edges by hitting Control Shift and selecting an edge, and a gumball appears, and you can use that gumball to change the height of things and change the roof. So it's really quick and simple to start creating rooms. And then also, if you want to split rooms, say you wanted to create a perimeter core zone, you can start by actually using the rectangle corner to corner Rhino feature command, and trace the room that you want to create the perimeter core zone in, and then use offset to, and then identify a distance. Say you want a 4-meter perimeter zone. So then once you select that curve, it will offset 4 meters inside. And then we want to use polyline to draw 2 trapezoids, or at least just the cutting surface, right? So the way PO split works is it will select a single cutting surface, but it needs to be able to split the room into 2 geometries with 1 cutter. And so it's really important what order you draw in. So let me just show that. I think it makes more sense watching it than me explaining it. So if we type in PO split room, this command, oh, actually I want to extrude my curves first. So typing in extrude curve will allow you to select the cutting surfaces that you drew. And I have wireframe on. Let's go to ghosted so it's just a little bit easier to see. Now you can type in PO split room. And then you select the room first, and then you select the cutting surface. And you want to start with the trapezoid. So let's see what happened. It created 1 room here and cut out based on the cutter. And right now we can only support a single poly surface as a cutting surface. So we can't select more than 1 surface. So, and you can see in the room manager that the room, like a new room was created. So we'll go ahead and do that for the rest of the space. And then now we have a core that we just need to split by the end cutting surfaces. There we go. I think that took care of it.
So for some of you who are watching this and thinking why you don't automate this, we can totally automate this, but the thing has been, and we have done it on the Grasshopper side, the thing is as soon as you automate it, people don't use it for a zone like this, right? You're going to use it for like very complicated things, and that can fail. So again, like this is one of those things that we can provide in a script, or you can write a script, or it can be worked with Grasshopper too if this is like something that you want to do over and over. But this is the way to show that you have full control on how you can split the zones if you want.
Yeah, it allows you to do more than just splitting the room into 2 rectangles or 2 squares. You can get pretty intricate with how you're carving sections or spaces out of your rooms. There are some native Rhino commands that are really helpful, like select all curves, so that you can delete all the curves that you had just to keep a clean model. And once you're kind of happy with how your geometry looks, you can go ahead and start naming everything, right? So if you double click on a room, the room properties comes up, and you can add human readable room names. And hopefully, like we have a new command called reset identifier that will allow us to change the room ID by the display name. So I'm just going to change the names, and we also have a built-in validator to find duplicate names. Oops, we don't want that symbol there. So I'll just name a bunch of this. Let's call this is a residential building right now. Hit OK. And let's start with here. That's my south perimeter. Just bear with me as I rename all of these. This is my core space. And then that's my north.
So for the people who are new to Rhino and probably thinking you can insert PDF or image or CAD drawings underneath of if you want to trace. So in this case, we just started from scratch, but you can totally do that and start drawing on top of an existing drawing if you bring it from somewhere else.
Yes, we have a couple of different videos that show different ways to start modeling geometry. That's kind of the beauty of pollination. You can start with a mass and then split that mass into smaller pieces, or you can import a CAD file and trace over it, whatever makes it easy for you to model. Since we were just doing this as a demo, this is just a quick model from scratch. So now that I've renamed all of my rooms, I'm going to go ahead and add apertures. So there's, you can draw apertures that you want in a specific order by selecting a surface. So once you select the surface and hit enter, you can go ahead and draw your windows. And similar to the draw room, if you hit shift, it will allow you to draw rectangular spaces. And this is a very long room. So I'm just going to quickly, and then you hit enter to finish drawing on that surface. Now, if you're at a point in design where you just want to quickly add windows by ratio, you can select all of your rooms and go to add by window to wall ratio. And there's options to select a window to wall ratio by orientation. For now, I'm going to keep all the defaults, and I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it first and then show you the right way. It's going to take a little bit of time here. There's a question in the chat box, Mustafa, if you want to, oh, there you go. It just started. Never mind, we'll come back to that. So if I go to render settings, we have the ability to turn off the preview of certain aspects of our model. So I'm going to turn off my roof and ceiling so we can see all our walls, and then I'm going to close this. So you can see when I added apertures by window to wall ratio before running solve adjacency, it's adding it to all of the interior surfaces. We don't want that. So in Rhino, we support Control Z, which undoes everything, which is really cool. And then we can select everything, and you might have missed it, but it didn't add windows to the rooms where it was drawn using specific size. It only adds it to walls that don't already have apertures. So what I'll do is I also noticed that maybe I don't want this perimeter zone and this perimeter zone as a perimeter zone because it's not really in a perimeter. So I can type in PO merge rooms. And the first step is to select the host room and then select the other rooms to merge in. So I'm going to select the other rooms that I want to merge in, and I'm going to hit enter. And there's a little bit, let's just see if there's a little bit of a bug with the preview here. Let me just go back and refresh and refresh that. There you go. So now you can see that that's actually merged in, but you can still see where that old room used to be. If you don't want to see those lines, we have a command called PO rebuild room. And you can hit P, and now those lines disappear, and this reads as a single room. So before we go back and add our windows again, I'm going to actually hit solve adjacency. So type in PO solve adjacency, and that will allow, that takes care of intersect and matching. And for now, I'm not going to set air boundaries. And then you can see that it converts everything to interior rooms, but I do want some air boundaries in this space. So I can select this and hit PO solve adjacency again and say set air boundaries only on the interior walls in this space. And that will change the boundary condition there. So we are now ready to apply window by wall ratio. I can select all of the rooms and say draw add window, add by window to wall ratio. I'll keep everything the same and let that run. It will run faster this time because it's not trying to add windows to all the interior surfaces. And you'll notice that even that slightly sloped roof that we have gets windows added to it based on the window to wall ratio script. So that's adding all of it. We're almost ready to start simulating. We want to add some context. Now, to add context, we're assuming most people will have a context that's coming from some kind of outdoor tool. So our workflow to add shades or context is to go to add shades, select site context and shades, and use the geometry that's drawn in Rhino. So I just use the rectangle command to create some buildings as site geometry and added them as context. So we have context added. And since this is a small building and it's all going to have similar construction, I'm going to select all of the rooms and click on edit in order to edit the construction, the program type, and the HVAC systems in one go. If it's a larger building, you can definitely select by floor or select based on how you've zoned your building to select all of these settings. But for now, I'm going to unclick by global construction set to select a construction set. And there you go. I'm going to type in 2019 to kind of filter what I want. And I know I'm in climate zone 4. So that will limit how many choices I have, and I will choose a steel frame building and then do the same for program type. I've created this very beautiful residential building. So I will go to 2019 and I'll type in mid-rise and I'll just select the apartment. You have to make sure you select in the window and then hit OK. And the last item is to add the HVAC systems. So you can start with ideal air systems, or you can add from Open Studio Library. And since this is a super green building, I'm going to start with a heating and cooling DOAS system with water source heat pump that is paired with a ground source heat pump. And so I'll hit OK. Just remember, you have to select what system you want and then hit OK for it to show up here. And once I hit OK, they'll apply that program to all of those rooms. Any questions so far? I'm going really fast, but.
I think we're good. We are answering to the questions that comes in.
Oh, great. Okay.
There's nothing specific for you.
All right, perfect. So the last 2 things that I'm going to do before we get ready is, because I want to run a daylighting study and an energy study at the same time, I'm going to add a sensor grid. So there is a button, or you can type in PO add sensor grid. I like to click on the icons to add a sensor grid. So you'll select the rooms and surfaces that you'd like to add the grid to. You can select the grid size. I'm going to use a generous grid size just because it will help with running a little bit faster. So I'll set it to 5 meters square, and the offset distance is set to about 0.7 meters. Okay. And there we go. We have our sensor grid. If you don't like to see the sensor grid, you can always type in PO select sensor grids, and that will allow you to select it. And then you can go to your visibility settings and turn it off so you can hide objects. They're still there. They're just hidden from the view. I'm going to undo that. And the last thing we want to do is we want to validate our model. So everything looks good with my model. I'm going to go ahead and run simulation. So if you click on run simulation in the pollination panel, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is to sign in, and it'll take you to an authorization window. And I'll just use my account, and once it's successful, I'll close it. And you'll want to give this a name, so I will call this daylight for the user meetup. And you can go ahead and select recipes. Now, if your recipes have to be added to projects, in the web app before you can access them through Rhino. So you just want to make sure you'll see more recipes here than you probably see on your end. And that's probably why, is because you need to go to the web app and make sure that recipes are added to the projects that you're working in. So I'm going to first select annual daylight. And there's a bunch of inputs. The only one you really need to pay attention to is uploading a WEA file. So I already have one downloaded for Philadelphia, and I'll go ahead and upload that. You can also use the Rhino Grasshopper, the Grasshopper plugin for pollination to convert an EPW file into a WEA file if you can't find one. The CPU counts you can set based on the study that you want to run and how big it is. I'm going to just keep everything as default for now. And I'm going to pollinate and let that run on the cloud. So once it says it's created, I can actually go ahead in here and type in annual energy to change the study that I want to do. And I'm going to switch it up so that now instead of annual daylighting, I'm going to run the annual energy use recipe. And this requires a DDY file and an EPW file. And it's nice that it remembers the location where you got the last file from, so you're not searching for it every time. And that's all I really want to add. I'm not customizing anything right now. I have all my systems set. Everything's validated. This time I'm going to, instead of running it on the cloud, I'm going to run locally. So let's hit pollinate. And I'll let that run. It shouldn't take that long since it's a small building. And while that's running, I can pull up my web app and see what's going on with my daylighting simulation. So if I go to my page and go to my demo. So here's that daylighting study that I sent to the cloud. It's still running. So I'll keep an eye on it. And let's see. Energy is also still running. So while that's running, Mustafa, have you been able to answer all the questions, or?
I think so. One thing is, can you show how to add a recipe to a project?
Yeah, sure. So we can go to, where's my pollination app? So if you go back to Cloud app and you go to your settings, like in a project, and go to the project settings, this is where you can select recipes. And as you can see, I have 4 recipes, but say I wanted to add a radiation recipe. So there's a couple of different options, cumulative, annual sky, or annual radiation. You can go ahead and add them to the project, and then you'll see them and be able to run them from within Rhino. Yeah. So you can add multiple. Okay.
So this, just to make sure, like we also talk about why this is set like this. For personal projects, it might not make that much sense because you want to have all the recipes, right? But for your office projects or the projects that multiple people can use it, this is a way for you to limit the recipes that people can run inside that project. One, you have more control and like to make sure people are using the right recipes. The second one is for cost. So when we have a CFD simulation recipe, for example, there, you don't want people just to test it on every project because that will take a longer time. So you want to have more control on what recipes are accessible to what project. That's why.
Okay. So the energy model finished running. Let me just check on the daylighting study. So let's go back to my project settings. It's still running, but let's go ahead and load results. So when you go to load results in the Rhino panel, it's automatically going to show that daylighting study that was from the cloud. If you don't see it here for any reason, you can go to add and choose whether it's from cloud or local job. So if it's a cloud job, you can go to cloud and it will filter everything that you've run. It looks like, yeah, it saves everything that you've ever run here. And you can select which study based on the job name you want to load results for. So you can go back in time as long as you're diligent about how you're naming your jobs. It should be easy to find. And when it's saved locally, it shows the file path. So you can go to the results folder and see it on your personal drive, or you can go to the drop-down and select which results to load. So for the energy model, there's a results report that comes from Open Studio that I can load, and it will open in my Chrome or whatever browser you're using with the results of the energy model. And we're actually working on implementing a workflow that opens that HTML file in the Rhino panel. And so hopefully that will be something that will keep everything in one place. So you can see daylighting results right next to energy results. Let me just check on our daylighting study. Where are you? Let's see, where is it? It's still running, but it should be done soon. Let me hit refresh on it. Okay, it's finished. So now you can open it and view it in the app, or you can actually load the results straight in Rhino. So if I go to the results to load and I select which ones I want to load, I'm going to select daylight autonomy and hit load on it. It just takes a second, and I will close this so that we can see in shaded view the view. We have the new legend here that we can make changes to. So right now it's the gradient is flipped where 0 is red and 100 is blue. So we can just flip that very quickly, change your max, give it a title to say % of time. And if you want to change colors, you can totally do that. You can increase the number of segments. Pretty much we're supporting all of the functionalities from Ladybug Tools for legend parameters. And there you go. There's your results. And this is a time where I'm going to go back and select my sensor grids and turn them off. PO select. Oh. Select sensor grids. And I'll turn it off. And the results are still there. You just don't see that the dots on there. All right. So that's pretty much what I had for the demo.
Okay, we can probably answer these questions that we have here, like the rest. So, and thank you so much for the presentation, John Key. Let's see, as the questions are coming, there's how much time is in simulation is reduced with cloud simulation. I use Design Builder, but Simulation Manager use only energy plot 32 bits. So simulation time is very large, and the memory processor never uses more than 25%. So it depends on the type of simulation. For energy simulation itself, we can use better machines, and we are using 64 bits, but we cannot run Energy Plus in parallel. There is a project that's going like Energy Plus 10x faster, which will provide some multiprocessing functionalities for larger buildings. As soon as they support it, we can support it too. But that question is that you have to try it, and we can use better machines, but we cannot run the energy simulation itself in parallel, except if you use something like Dragonfly workflow. In that scenario, you can run every floor in parallel, and that can make the whole process faster. I mean, this has been discussed before, and we can provide more information. Justin do you have another question, Justin?
Yeah, I have a question about energy visualizations. I noticed during the setup and run before you pollinate the energy model, there's one of the windows is about visualization options, and I was wondering, what are the inputs there? I haven't had a very clear idea of kind of how to get those visualization options so that I could like color by, you know, heating load or cooling
Oh,
load
yeah.
or like all those other aspects that, would be really nice to visually show architects the impacts of, big glazing on certain exposures or certain parts of the building. Um, so it's that visualize parameter dash parameter, visualize something along those lines that I don't quite understand how to use.
Yeah. So there's the color by face properties. Is that what you're talking about?
There's
Or
that,
like
but I
there's a
think
bunch?
there
So
was the
let me
input that
help.
was required when you
Right.
run the simulation, or the visual results don't show up, I think, or maybe I'm doing it wrong, and maybe that's the case.
No, you're talking about the 3D model one.
Yeah.
So yes, we are. So I don't know if you set it up. So if you use the energy simulation recipe, I think it's called annual energy use.
Mhm.
By default, one of the outputs that we generate is a 3D HTML that has some of the results embedded inside,
Okay.
that basically you can use their viewer to visualize. On our side, right now, we have color by for all the inputs, but we haven't added color by the output that comes from the simulation. So you can use that color by for face type and color by for room to check all the inputs in the model before running the simulation. But what you're talking about is basically, instead of coloring grid, coloring faces using the output of simulation. For now, you have to use that OpenStudio measure.
Okay.
And we have an app for that, so you can try it even online.
And maybe just a small correction to what you said, Mustafa. So we don't quite generate that by default, but there's an input for that annual energy use recipe that's called visualization variables, and you
Yeah,
can
that
plug
one.
in any zone level, any surface level energy plus output that you want to preview on that 3D geometry.
Okay,
So
and then it will show up. Now, the 3D geometry that's only web-based for now. It doesn't show the results here in Rhino quite yet.
Correct. Right now, it's
Okay.
only web-based.
Okay.
But again, because we have the technology there to color by any data, it's not something that we cannot add, and it's something that has been requested. So yes, it can come to Rhino. Next question is, can multiple MEP systems be assigned to different zones directly from Rhino app? Yes. So every app has its own HVAC system setting, so you can select multiple of them and change them. And then I also assume that native IDF and result outputs can be accessed for further post-processing. Yes, everything that we run, maybe this is a good time to show, like we give you the whole run folder. There is nothing that we hide. Even either if you run it locally, if you run it on Pollination, you can access everything that is generated during the simulation, and you can run with it. If you only want the IDF, you don't need to run the simulation. You can just use export, and you can save as the model as IDF or GEM or any other format that you want. So you can totally use the Rhino plugin as the UI to build the model and run it somewhere else if you want, or you can do the end-to-end process inside the Rhino. So we have another question. Brett is asking, do you have any geometry commands that help create closed solids from surfaces that are near each other? If an architectural model has interior walls that aren't quite attached to exterior walls in a direct import. We don't, but Rhino has a lot of commands that can help you do that. If you have some samples, or if you share a sample on Discourse, we can help you there. And if it makes sense to create a command, like we can also do that, basically use those Rhino commands to automate it. Grasshopper also has a component that tries to figure out all the closed geometry based on that. This is like something that if you can share a sample, we can totally do that and help you with that. Pedro has another question. Can I import any GBXML model from Design Builder to evaluate the simulation time in the cloud. Yes, Pedro, you can import GBXML into Rhino here and then try to run it. We don't support GBXML directly for recipe, but you can bring it here, and then when it comes in, it's a honeybee model, a pollination model that you can run it. But it goes through GBXML, right? So you might need to set up some of the stuff that gets lost in the export-import process from Design Builder and bringing it back here to our Rhino plugin. One more question. I wonder how much percentage different for energy simulation result electricity comparing to IES result. So this is an IES versus Energy Plus question, more than like a question for us. Depending, and there has been studies, so you have to compare your model, and it depends how you put your inputs in. I don't know. The answer is I don't know, but there are studies, and I think like one of the things that we are promoting is, because like the integration is there, just running both and compare them and see which one is the right one for you to use. Can we visualize this result in Pollination web app as well? And can we take these results to LBT for visualization? The answer to both of them is yes. So can you show? Yep.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. So I did have it ready to go. So the same model is, because we ran it on the cloud, is available on the cloud, and we can visualize it in the cloud, and it has a lot of the same functionalities as you saw in Rhino, where you can turn off the roof and ceiling. You can go to the grid and make changes to the display settings, for the various objects, and change the data points that you're visualizing. Very similar to what you see in Rhino. You can select different metrics and change the color scheme. So it has all the different schemes that are also available here in the web app.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let me answer two more questions, and then we'll get to Justin. I hopefully I pronounced your name right. Leonidas? Okay, sorry.
Leonidas, I think it is.
Leonidas.
Okay, Leonidas, thank you. Could we change properties of the window glass, like G value, light transmittance, outdoor reflectance, so that we have different results? Yes, you can totally, you can edit the information in the level of a room or level of a surface. So John Key can show you.
Yeah, so if we wanted to, So if we wanted to change just the room, so instead of global construction sets, right now this was just selecting one type, but you can go into, you can duplicate it and then edit it. So you can say this is custom. So you can start with one, and you can go ahead and change every single construction entity, right? So you can get in there and really make changes to every single like construction set object in there.
Right, I think this question mostly is about like just selecting a surface and editing the edit the parameters for that surface, not the room. If you want,
for the surface.
Yeah, for the surface itself. So if you select the surface, you can select it from that drop down too, or I can show it here if you want.
So if we go to a room and we select a face,
and then just a face with a window, because
right.
So this is
here's
similar.
The construction setting, so you can change it off the parent setting and go ahead and change it here. So
we have a tutorial, that goes through this. You have energy construction and you have the radiance modifier on the top.
So if you want to change, I left everything for daylighting kind of generic, but if you wanted to take one of these generic, or if you have your own radiance definition, you can build it from here and create your own modifier and apply it to, I'm going to cancel here. You can apply it to each face individually.
Okay, thank you. So next question, in Rhino plugin, is there an interface to review HVAC system assumptions and adjust settings? To my understanding, we do not have it exposed in Rhino plugin yet. What people have done is to take the model to OpenStudio and then use the OpenStudio user interface to check all those assumptions.
I mean, maybe we could say there are a few very high-level parameters that are exposed, things like just heat recovery, like the effectiveness of heat recovery or demand-controlled ventilation. There's a simple switch for that. A lot of things related to ventilation, you can toggle those on and off. But if you want to get down into detailed performance curves and stuff like that, you'd have to go over to an OSM or use an OpenStudio measure to tweak those performance curves.
Okay, and thank you, Chris. Now, Justin, what's your question?
I was curious about windows. You know, in Energy Plus, you can't put a window directly adjacent to an edge of a room. And I'm thinking that that is true also in pollination. I noticed the windows don't quite show up right. They kind of clip through the room. So is there an assumption on how far they need to be from an edge of a room to kind of accurately be picked up? I know that's more of an Energy Plus question, but I'm curious how Pollination's handling it,
I
since you
mean,
have a lot more
pollination,
control. You have a lot more control in
right.
Pollination than you did ever in Energy Plus with this.
Right. So it's just like even you do a little bit more than tolerance, we should pick it up correctly. The tolerance
Okay.
in your Rhino model, whatever it is. So for example, if you see the import from IES, when we import it, because doors, for example, are touching the edge, we just move them up 1 centimeter
Okay.
in that case. So it doesn't change anything. It just like moved up for 1 centimeter. It's mostly a visualization thing right here. So it doesn't touch the edge.
Okay. Great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Could we make an analysis for certain hours or month during the year? Again, like depends on the recipe, and the answer for most of the recipes is yes. So this is something that when you set up a recipe, check the recipe input. Some of them you have to set it up when you set the WEA file or a weather file. You just have a partial weather file. Some of them you put the whole weather file and then you set up the analysis period. It's different from recipe by recipe, but generally speaking, most of the recipes allow you to do that. Quick question, do we have to rotate the model to the true north? That's also a choice. If a lot of people, when they model, they do that and they don't use the north input for the recipes. But almost all the recipes that we have allows you to change the north or set the north to a value. So you can basically work the geometry the way that you are comfortable to model in Rhino. And then when you select the recipe to run it, there is an input all the way on the top or here north that you can change that number to a value. If you load the same recipe from Grasshopper, you can even use a vector, which is usually easier or less prone to errors, because when you put a number, it's always like, which direction is that? I make that mistake a lot of time. I made it all the time. So, but we have good description to help you not to make that mistake. Okay, a lot of great questions. Any other questions here? Tools, Rafael here, great work at Tools. I'm getting more and more excited about pollination. Thank you so much. Yeah, we are too here, getting more and more excited about pollination and what it offers. So I think if there is no other question, we can wrap it up. We have 2 or 3 more slides, right?
Yeah. Do you want to share?
Yeah, sure. I can do that.
The last 2 slides.
Okay, if you, as soon as my screen shows up here, if you want to learn more about the Rhino plugin, you can go to our user manual, docs.pollination.cloud, and there are videos, there are documentation, list of commands, everything that you can get started. We went through the questions, of course. Again, Pollination Cloud and Pollination Community is our discourse. If you have any questions, see you on discourse. Just post your questions there. And I should thank, like, maybe give a shout out to Justin, who is here already, and Victor. Like, if you give us feedback, you'll see the effect in the app. We are good at listening, and if you ask for something that makes sense and is going to be useful for other users, implementing it in the plugin, So keep your suggestions coming, and we'll do our best to include them, I mean, the ones that make sense, in the app, or give you another way or a workaround or a script to do it for yourself, or if it's specific to your project. The other thing is we have posted the pricing now for more than a month there, and we are making the transition for the plugins to be paid. If you have been using it so far, don't worry, you will still get the 2 weeks for the trial period, but keep an eye on our discourse for the updates about the pricing and change the license. Nothing is going to break. Whatever you're using should work. It will be just a matter of downloading the new version of plugin, and then, or just like getting a new license from Pollination. That's it. Like, it shouldn't break any of the workflows that you're working with. And with that, I hope we are bringing freedom and flexibility for you to deal with real world complexity. And thank you, Justin. Like, he's saying, like, they're exceptional in picking up feedback. That's great to hear. Just give us feedback and we do our best. You'll see it. Yeah. So, yep. Help us make these things better for everyone, including yourself. Okay.